The silence was profound. Within the darkness of the warehouse, John Cena and Maya stood concealed behind a pillar, while before them stood Victor Hale, aiming a gun, a faint smile upon his lips. Maya whispered, her voice trembling, "John Cena, if they see us, it will be the end of everything." Softly, John Cena replied, "Do not fear. The victory shall be ours." Suddenly, the lights went out. A gunshot echoed. Something heavy collapsed. The silence deepened, leaving behind a single lingering question. Who had fallen, the enemy or the hero in whom all had placed their faith? Prepare yourself for a story that will touch your heart and rekindle hope. But before we continue, kindly tell us where you are watching from. If tales of humanity and compassion resonate with you, please like and subscribe. For tomorrow we shall return with another remarkable narrative. The morning was soft and quiet. Inside the gym, the laughter of children and the sound of boxing gloves echoed. John Cena was teaching the children the basic principles of boxing. He explained to them that if your breathing is steady, your punches feel stronger, and if your heart is with the truth, the path ahead naturally becomes clear. Just then, a young boy hesitantly asked, "Sir, what should we do if the enemy is stronger than us?" John Cena smiled, placed a hand on his shoulder, and gently replied, "Real strength isn't in the body, it's in the heart and the truth." Hearing this, the boy felt reassured. He nodded, smiled, and John Cena once again became engrossed in teaching the children. At that very moment, the gym door opened slowly. A woman entered. It was Maya. In her hand was a heavy file, and her face showed signs of worry. She walked straight up to John Cena and said, "Mr. Cena, I need your help." Startled, John Cena asked, "Help with what?" Maya opened the file, which was filled with pictures and documents. The images showed empty classrooms, closed schools, and disappointed children. She softly explained, "This is Victor Hale, the city's big businessman, but in reality, its biggest thief. He's embezzling charity funds. Schools are shutting down, children can't study, hospitals lie empty. People are afraid, and no one is speaking up." John Cena flipped through the pages of the file. He paused at a picture showing children sitting at empty desks. His voice grew heavy. "These children are dreams, and no one can steal dreams." Then he closed the file, looked at Maya, and said, "This fight isn't yours alone anymore. It's mine too." For the first time, a glimmer of hope shone in Maya's eyes. Maya slowly explained that near the port was warehouse number 13. Every week, a meeting took place there at night. That's where the money was moved and where all the decisions were made. John Cena said seriously, "We need words. Words will become our evidence." Maya took out a small recorder from her bag and said, "I will capture the voices. You clear the path." John Cena took the recorder, felt its weight in his hand, then handed it back to her and said, "You keep it safe. I'll pave the way." Evening had settled, and the city streets were still damp from the rain. The air carried a mix of humidity and the scent of the sea. John Cena and Maya arrived at a secluded part of the port where old warehouses stood in a row. Maya whispered, "This is it, warehouse number 13. This is where they hold meetings every week, late at night. This is where the money moves, and where the decisions are made that have plunged the city's schools into darkness." John Cena lifted his gaze to study the building. The walls appeared old, but the lock on the door was new. Fresh footprints marked the damp ground. He bent down to examine them. The right footprint was deep, the left one light. He looked at Maya and said, "These aren't the steps of an ordinary person. These belong to Marcus, the one you told me about. Victor's right-hand man." Maya nodded in agreement. "Yes, it's Marcus. He's present at every meeting." They circled the warehouse. A camera was installed at the corner of the roof, but its angle was off. leaving a blind spot to the right. John Cena observed carefully and said, "We'll enter through that blind spot." As they stepped onto a wooden plank near the wall, it creaked softly. John Cena immediately stopped and warned, "The floor is weak. We must move as softly as the air." They stood in the shadows, studying the entire path ahead. In the distance, the lights of ships shimmered on the sea, and the only sound in the silence was the dripping of water. Maya took the recorder from her pocket and pressed a button. A test recording played back clearly. She breathed a sigh of relief and said, "If we make it this far, the rest will be safe." John Cena looked at her and said, "When the sun rises tomorrow, these sounds will be our testimony." Maya replied, "I feel afraid, but I also have faith." John Cena said gently, "Fear isn't a bad thing. Fear reminds us we're alive. What matters is where we place our faith. Ours is with the truth." Just then, an old tea stall owner noticed them and asked, "What are you two doing here?" Maya smiled and said, "We're just looking for the way." The shopkeeper quietly informed them, "A black van shows up here in the last watch of the night. It appears suddenly and leaves quickly." John Cena mentally noted the time. This clue was important. On their way back, both were silent. With every step, their heartbeats grew louder. Maya thought about how she had been reporting news for years, but today she had become part of the story. John Cena told himself that he always taught children to stand by the truth, and now it was time to live by his own lesson. In the heart of the city stood a tall building, and on its top floor was Victor Hale's office. The room was surrounded by glass walls, and from outside, the entire city appeared as tiny dots of light. Victor sat in his large chair. On the table in front of him was a crystal ashtray, and the heavy scent of cigar smoke filled the entire room. His demeanor reflected not calmness, but arrogance. He repeatedly blew smoke rings and laughed as he watched them vanish into the air. The door opened, and Marcus entered. His steps were heavy, and his gait carried the same limp that John and Maya had noticed. Marcus greeted him and said softly, "Boss, that reporter Maya still hasn't backed down, and now that wrestler John Cena is standing with her." Victor laughed loudly. He leaned forward in his chair and said, "A reporter and a wrestler? They think they can block my path? These people don't understand. Truth may look good on paper, but power is always built with the money placed on the table." Victor stood up and walked closer to the glass wall. Pointing toward the city lights, he said, "Look, Marcus, all these lights bow down to me. These schools, these institutions, these charity projects, they all depend on my command. People see, but they don't speak, because everyone knows power is in my hands right now." Marcus nodded in agreement and said, "But boss, these two seem serious. Maya isn't one to give up, and everyone knows about Cena's past." Victor turned and looked at Marcus. There was a sharp glint in his eyes. He said, "Marcus, remember, those who stand against me don't get to speak for long. I've silenced many voices. Some were bought with money, others with fear. Now these two will also become pawns in my game. The only difference is they won't even realize when their move is over." He picked up the phone and made a call. A guard answered on the other end. Victor said in a low voice, "Tighten security at warehouse number 13 tonight. No outsiders get in. The time is 1:13. If anyone tries to reach there, make sure they don't get a chance to turn back." The guard replied, "Yes, boss. Everything will be ready." Victor ended the call and lit another cigar. Marcus cautiously asked, "What if these two make it inside?" Victor laughed and said, "Even if they do, they won't be coming back out. Darkness always swallows those who think they are the light." Then he took a long drag from his cigar and gazed out at the lights spread beyond the window. In his heart, he believed he was invincible. But he did not know that sometimes, even in the deepest darkness, a single spark can ignite, one that changes the entire game. It was late at night, and the gym lay empty. The laughter of children and the sound of their footsteps were now just memories. A faint light glowed in the room, falling on old posters plastered across the walls. John Cena and Maya were seated at a table scattered with papers. In one corner, Maya had drawn a map of the warehouse. She repeatedly marked points with a pencil, explaining to John where to enter and where the cameras were placed. John Cena listened with deep focus, occasionally adding insights from his own experience. Maya picked up the recorder and said, "This is our greatest weapon. If this works, Victor Hale will trap himself with his own words." John Cena replied calmly, "The voice never lies. This device may be small, but it holds the entire truth." Maya hesitated for a moment and asked, "What if we get caught?" Her voice carried fear, but her eyes held determination. John Cena gently responded, "Even if we are caught, this recorder will be our testimony. You just protect it. I'll handle the rest." Maya placed the recorder in her pocket and said softly, "I promise it will remain as safe as your words." John Cena stood up and walked toward the window, looking outside. The city lights flickered, but behind them lay the depth of darkness. He said to himself, "This game is difficult, but someone has to stand up." Turning to Maya, he continued, "You know, Maya, this fight isn't just for us. It's for the children sitting in closed classrooms. It's for the homes where hope is fading." Maya nodded silently and said, "That's why I put down my pen and chose this path." They decided to enter through the blind spot where the camera's angle didn't reach. John Cena would lead the way, and Maya would follow behind. If there was any noise, John would clear the path, and Maya would keep the recorder running. They repeated the plan in their minds multiple times so there would be no mistakes the following night. At one point, Maya said, "I'm afraid." John Cena looked at her and replied in a calm tone, "Being afraid isn't a bad thing. Fear keeps us cautious. The real question is where our faith lies. And my faith is with the truth." A slight moisture gathered in Maya's eyes, but a small smile also appeared on her lips. She said, "Yes, my faith lies there too." The night grew deeper. The papers and markings on the table seemed like a story waiting to turn into reality the next day. Finally, they looked at each other and silently agreed. There was no turning back now. No matter how difficult this journey might be, this was the path, and this was the time. The final watch of the night had arrived. A thick blanket of silence lay over the port. In the distance, ship lights flickered, but up close, darkness and dampness ruled everywhere. Warehouse number 13 stood silent like a secret, with its rusted walls and heavy door. The air carried a mix of salty breeze and the smell of old iron. John Cena and Maya entered through the blind spot with careful steps. Their footsteps were so light it was as if they weren't touching the ground at all. John led the way, and Maya followed closely, holding the recorder tightly in her pocket. Inside, the darkness was deep, but a small candle burned in the distance atop a table. In its faint light, a few guards stood, and stacks of cash were piled on the table. Suddenly, Victor Hale appeared. His tone dripped with arrogance. He stood near the table and declared loudly, "This city is mine. This money is mine. Here, every door opens at my command, and every tongue speaks at my signal. No one can undo me." His voice echoed off the warehouse walls. Maya quietly switched on the recorder. Every word was being captured. John Cena glanced at her and signaled to stay silent. Victor Hale continued speaking. He boasted about shutting down schools, diverting charity funds into his own vault, and how people could do nothing about it. His voice was filled with poisonous pride. At that moment, Marcus looked up. He sensed a shadow moving in the darkness. He stepped forward, but John Cena immediately pushed Maya behind him. John's gaze was firm. The warehouse light flickered for a moment and then went out completely. The entire hall was plunged into darkness. In the dark, the sound of running footsteps echoed. The clatter of guns being loaded rang out. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Then suddenly a gunshot was fired, so powerful that the warehouse roof shook. Maya held her breath. All she could hear was the echo of her own scream. John Cena pushed her to the ground and stood in front of her. In the darkness, a body fell to the ground. The sound of feet scrambling, the clang of a weapon dropping, and then complete silence. Maya's recorder was still running. Only the heavy sound of breaths was being captured. When the light returned, the scene was clear to everyone. Victor Hale's face had changed. For the first time, fear flashed in his eyes. His own words had just been recorded. The words he had spoken in arrogance were now testimony against him. John Cena stood straight. Sweat gleamed on his face, but his eyes were firm. Maya rose from the ground and held the recorder high. It was the moment when darkness broke and truth revealed its light. When the light returned, a moment of silence spread through the warehouse. The guards stood with their weapons drawn, but panic was clearly visible on their faces. Victor Hale's hands had begun to tremble. He tried to grip his gun firmly, but his own words had now become his enemy. Maya held up the recorder and said loudly, "These are your own words, Victor. You admitted with your own mouth that you stole charity funds, shut down schools, and embezzled money. Now the city will hear this and decide." At that moment, police sirens were heard in the distance. The color drained from Victor's face. He looked at Marcus as if searching for one last hope. Marcus lowered his eyes. The door burst open, and the police entered. An officer stepped forward and handcuffed Victor Hale. Victor tried to resist, but John Cena stepped forward and firmly restrained his wrist. After that, Victor threw his weapon to the ground. The police officer took the recorder from Maya and said, "This is the most important evidence. The people of the city will now know the truth." Maya breathed a sigh of relief and looked at John. John Cena said calmly, "I promised the children that no one can steal dreams. Today that promise has been fulfilled." Victor Hale was taken away by the police. His steps were heavy, and his eyes carried the shadow of defeat. The man who had considered himself invincible just moments ago was now walking away bowed like a prisoner. The others in the warehouse stood in silence. No one had the courage to look John Cena and Maya in the eye. Maya walked closer to John and said, "You didn't just stand by me, you stood by the entire city." John Cena replied gently, "The real heroes are the children whose dreams are still alive. We only showed those dreams a way forward." Morning was approaching. As they stepped out of the warehouse, the air felt fresh. Light was spreading across the sky. Maya looked toward the ocean waves in the distance and said, "No matter how deep the darkness, a single spark of truth can cut through it." John Cena smiled softly and replied, "A true hero is one who never loses courage, even in the darkest times." This story teaches us that no matter how deep the darkness, even a small spark of truth can cut through it. True strength lies not just in the body but also in character. And a hero is someone who stands up for others, no matter how difficult the circumstances may be. If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear more stories that keep hope and humanity alive, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we will bring you another inspiring story.